All right, let's bring in NBC Boston's political commentator, Sue O'Connell. We got a lot to break down after that, Sue.
Yep.
I mean, you're just listening to some of Trump's comments right there, once again representing sort of a stark contrast with what the Vice President, Kamala Harris, is sort of saying out on the campaign trail. Once again, this weekend, she was in Vegas. She used her speech to outline her plans to bolster the economy, something that pundits like yourself, a lot of folks have been waiting for her to do, to get out there and talk about her policies. How are people reacting to these two sort of very different speeches?
Well, Colton, we saw a little bit of it. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, he also said on Sunday that Trump would be better off attacking Harris's policies. So instead of saying Harris is crazy, maybe Trump should say the policies are crazy liberal. And Republican Representative Tom Emmer, he said that Trump should try and stick to the issues. And as we saw, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan called Trump's comments outrageous and unacceptable. Look, Republicans, almost all of them are unable to come out and just completely say he shouldn't be saying it, but they're all getting there a little bit. And Trump's musings that we just listened to about letting police have, a really violent day. Well, his campaign has said those comments were just made in jest. But social media says it sounded a lot like Trump was suggesting the plot from the movie The Purge. Now, Harris, look, she's taking some reasonable shots at Trump, too. Not nearly as extreme as he is out there. And as she keeps putting policy front and center in her speeches, the criticism that she is light on policy is disappearing.
Yeah. I want to turn quickly to tomorrow's debate between the candidates for vice president. You got Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. They both have subjects that they want to communicate out there to the voters, but I'm more curious about the topics that each candidate should avoid.
Yeah, J.D. Vance, he's going to be trying to avoid talking about a federal abortion ban. He may also try to avoid mentioning that lie that immigrants are eating pets in Ohio. And he will certainly try to not let mentions of that conservative report, the Project 2025, dominate the night. And Tim Walz, he may want to address but then try to avoid and keep it simple with his answer when it comes to explaining his military service or his response as governor to the 2020 civil unrest in his home state. And he will most likely want to avoid deep discussions of Joe Biden stepping aside. Now, remember, the golden rule of being a candidate for vice president is to do no harm to your ticket. So the candidates may want to avoid any high-stakes engagement with each other.
It'll be interesting to see if voters sort of view that, though, as sort of like a lack of transparency.
Sure.
Quickly, let's talk about endorsements. Important part of any campaign out there. Vice President Harris continuing to receive support from, I would say, a largely unlikely group of people.
Yep.
Conservative Republicans. Once again, over the weekend on X, Twitter, former Republican Senator Jeff Flake announcing that he's endorsing the vice president. He joins a long list of Republicans now who are openly supporting a Democrat for president. How common is this? And are these sort of endorsements coming from conservatives hurting Harris as far as, sort of the eyes and the mindset of the progressive voter?
That's a good question, Colton. But to your first one, it's almost completely unheard of, at least to this degree. And one might say, like everything else in this era, it's unprecedented, especially since the Republicans endorsing the Democratic ticket are making it very clear for the most part that they don't agree with anything, any of the policies that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz or the Democrats are suggesting or support. But they fear a second Trump presidency would be terrible, a disaster for democracy. And the list of Republicans for Harris includes more than 100 former staffers and national security leaders, a group called Reagan, Bush, McCain, and Romney alumni for Harris. It also includes, as we know, former Vice President Dick Cheney and former Representative Liz Cheney. Now, look, normally endorsements from very conservative Republicans, if they ever happen, might actually hurt a Democrat. But in this case, many Harris supporters of every party say they're putting country over party. And as I've said before, Harris, in this moment, is a candidate who is endorsed by both Vice President Dick Cheney and Representative Ayanna Pressley, and they have almost nothing in common.
If there's one thing that the Democrats do owe Donald Trump, it is that he certainly has been the best force at unifying that party and also certainly fundraising for them as well.
Indeed.
All right, Sue, as always, thank you. We want to remind everyone, NBC News will have special coverage leading up to tomorrow night's vice presidential debate. You can tune in tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, right here on NBC 10 Boston. And don't forget, we recap all the week's biggest political headlines every Sunday on At Issue. You can join Sue O'Connell, Corey Smith, and Matt Pritchard. It airs at 11:30. That is, of course, immediately following Meet the Press.